We're here to have an amazing conversation about automating IT operations with AI and talk a little bit about what the problem set is and how we'll able to overcome those challenges.
What you need to understand is really the capacity trap. So, over the course of the years, Paul and myself, we've had the experience of running large IT organization. We see an operating model such as plan, build, and run. However, what seems true is that most of the IT teams are consumed by those run tasks. How do I do manual triage? How do I do patching? How do I keep the lights on? So everybody is now in this model, which is, hey, let's ensure as much green as possible on that dashboard. The challenge is what you get with that methodology is you get alert fatigue. You get increased MTTR, which is mean time to recovery. You get reactive monitoring. But there are certain large consequences what comes with that methodology as well. What you get is team burnout, which impacts people capacity of doing other things, whether it might be from innovation, whether it might be working on AI initiatives, whether it might be working on net new builds. You get to identify really systems or symptoms, not really issues. You don't get time for innovation. And then you get this massive overhead of outages, which are significantly longer and longer and longer. And the reason why they've become even more longer is because they're harder to detect in these complex environments of hybrid IT. So the list kind of goes on. So I would say that shift is um, from reactive to kind of fixing what's broken to proactive IT, which is predicting and preventing. And Paul's going to talk a little bit more about that. It's silencing the noise of how do I take these tsunami of alerts and reduce them down so I don't get bogged down. And then there's accelerated resolution, which is reducing faster root cause analysis and automation, significantly decreasing your mean time to resolution.
It's funny, a lot of this is based on the success of IT as a whole. IT has grown over time based on things that are happening in the business. They bought other companies, and that has built IT. They decided to go to cloud, and that has created more IT. They decided to go to multiple clouds, and that's created more IT. They decided to go to the edge, and that's created more IT. That diversification has created a complex series of runbooks, and a lot of those complex series of runbooks are in fact manual. So IT has moved from what could have been a highly autonomous environment to a highly manual effort because of the diversity of IT that's in front of them. In fact, the goal of IT, whenever we talk to CIOs and CTOs, is to say, most of my time and energy, most of my hundreds of people in my organization do reactive work. Sometimes that reactive work is in preparation for deployment. Sometimes that reactive work is in dealing with incidents and problems when they occur once it's in production. But either way, it's what happens, how do I ensure that I don't spend hundreds of hours deploying a new application and hundreds of hours trying to appreciate the incident that's in front of me. When it comes to dealing with production, you kind of think of it as alerts, right? So imagine getting hundreds of alerts on a specific incident and me having to deal with each individual alert as I see it, determining what the problem might be, determining what the mini runbook might look like, determining what the root cause might be, and then implementing change. Versus a predictive future where systematically it's determined the root cause. Systematically, it's determined that it's seen these problems in the past, systematically determined what the 5 steps it's going to take to fix it, and even systematically implement those change. Now, in fairness, that might be going from a predictive appreciation for what that future might look like to a prescriptive appreciation, but at least it's taking, in many ways, a lot of the manual understanding and the manual work out of that process.
If your team, as what Paul said, they are bogged down into reactive mode, they're really not thinking of how am I going to align myself to the business goals that's required. So you may have an organization where its CEO is saying, hey, I need to increase revenue by 30%. And that's really going to be how we stay competitive within the marketing landscape or within the particular market. I think this is where we look at is how do we take the time that the IT teams are focused on. So Are they focused too much on the operational tasks? Are they focused on the deployment or design tasks? And are they focused on the deployment tasks? So in our kind of view of what we see and what we think that the future, the ideal future state, if you want to say, look at it, is if today you're spending 90% on run IT operations, 80 to 90%, that is a strategic shift that needs to happen. You need to focus more on the deployment and creating net new innovation ideas rather than spending time in operations. So 10% in run which is all about automation. It's all about fine-tuning AI. It's all about improving accuracy. It's all about the data cleanliness. But then the 30 and the 60 or 90% of the time, if you look at it, it should be in design, it should be on strategy, it should be driving innovation, it should be build. So that way you're collectively aligning what IT needs to do for the business. So it is that business alignment, that's the convergence of IT, is truly looking at how you're contributing to the success of the organization.
And what's the biggest complaint from the business to IT? You're not doing this fast enough. You're not implementing change quickly. You're not doing as much as I need you to do. So if we move away from this reactive to predictive, from a reactive to a prescriptive, we can say we will do less worrying about production problems and more preparation for change. That's what that 60% says. So if we fix that, what's the outcome?
So the outcomes of that, what you're going to get, first and foremost, is you're going to get a 30% risk in production problems. And really, that's about reducing your MTTR. That's really about looking at how you're going to drive more productivity. How you're going to drive more innovation, as what we talked about, because you've freed up resources that are now focusing on driving innovation. And then you're also increasing the velocity. And what we mean specifically by that is now you have the ability to do more change. And as going back to what Paul's point was, the business says, oh, IT should have done this change as of yesterday. So now you're able to meet that business demand and with business alignment of how you're going to change the organization model or the organization business model and really meeting those requirements forward.
So we're achieving the first part of a VP of infrastructure to say, since I implement change so frequently, how can I implement that change faster? That's velocity. How can I do more of these changes in a single week? That's productivity. And then since I'm using templates and automation and AI, how can I ensure I have less risk in production by reducing the amount of manual effort it takes to deploy these changes in production? That's the value of automation within the change side. On the other side of that equation is now it's in production, right? Now it's in production. I have to deal with tens, hundreds, thousands of events, thousands of incidents. I'm monitoring hundreds of different dimensions of the database, of the infrastructure, of the cloud, of the edge. Things are coming at me very quickly. And because of that, I might have this efficiency gap between the number of events that are occurring and the amount of people I have to support fixing them. So either it takes too long to resolve a problem, or when I do resolve a problem, it takes too long to implement change, or I don't have enough time to actually figure out the root cause and solve the actual problems itself. We create this efficiency problem where I'm dealing mostly with reacting to incidents, determining what the problem is, implementing the change to get the system back up and running, and then forgetting the rest of the equation, right? Forgetting how to solve the problem, or forgetting to solve the problem, or forgetting to implement predictive change, predictive capacity planning in order to have that problem never be resolved again. So if we can solve that with AI and automation, then we start to see a pretty significant set of impacts. We see 15% in noise reduction. If we can deal with the root causes via AI, I will have less incidents that I will receive. If I get 15% less of 1,000 incidents, that's less noise in front of my teams. We'll have incident reductions in general because we're going to deal with root cause analysis by evaluating the incidents over time to know here are the hotspots, here are the predictive changes we should implement, here's the scalability or capacity changes we should know, and let's invoke those changes well before they become incidents. And then, of course, I can solve these problems faster, right? Because I can have AI recognize incidents as they come into the system and recognize that we've solved these problems before. It'll also recognize what the mini runbook might mean to change them and even invoke change automatically. That's the value of happening once it's in production. We can help them via helping educate, helping prioritize those use cases, doing an evaluation of where they should spend their time and energy in their IT infrastructure processes, and of course, actually implement the automations with our ability to understand the infrastructure and AI itself.